It was the kind of night that swallowed sound. Rain fell hard against the glass walls of Mr. Yoon's mansion, the sky cracked with lightning, and the wind carried a faint, distant cry. At first, he ignored it. Inside, the house was silent, except for the ticking clock and the rustle of papers on his desk. Mr. Yoon, a man who had built empires out of silence, didn't look up until the second cry came, clearer this time, sharper, like it was calling for help. "Sir," Grace said quietly from the doorway, her voice trembling. "There's someone outside." Mr. Yoon frowned. "At this hour?" "I think it's a child." He hesitated. The words felt strange in the stillness. "A child? Here?" He walked toward the door, each step slow, uncertain, until the cold air hit his face. At the gate, under the weak glow of a paper lantern, sat a young boy barefoot, soaked to the bone, clutching something in his hand. Grace moved closer. "Oh dear God, he's freezing." Mr. Yoon bent down and took the paper from the boy's hand. The ink was smeared, but one sentence remained clear. "He's safer with you." Mr. Yoon stood still, staring at the words, his heart caught between disbelief and something he couldn't yet name. Behind him, Grace whispered, "What kind of person leaves a child like this, in the rain?" The boy lifted his eyes, dark, quiet, familiar. For a moment, Mr. Yoon forgot to breathe. That night, something entered his house that money had never bought, something fragile, mysterious, and alive. And in the silence that followed, Grace's voice broke softly. "Sir," she said. "He looks like her." Mr. Yoon turned sharply. "Like who?" Grace hesitated, her eyes glistening. "Your wife." Mr. Yoon didn't speak for a long moment. The boy's eyes followed him as if they already knew where to look. Grace gently wrapped a blanket around the child and led him inside. The warmth of the house made the air tremble with quiet. "Where did he come from?" Mr. Yoon finally asked. Grace shook her head. "No one knows. But whoever left him, trusted you." Mr. Yoon gave a tired, bitter smile. "Trust me? They don't even know me." Grace looked at the boy, then back at him. "Maybe they know more than you think." The boy didn't cry. He only watched everything with an almost calm stillness, as if the world wasn't new to him, only familiar in another shape. When footsteps echoed from the stairs, the boy turned. A young girl appeared, hair messy from sleep, wearing her school sweater. Her name was Minseo. She stopped at the last step, eyes wide at the sight of the stranger in their living room. "Appa, who is that?" she asked softly. Mr. Yoon opened his mouth, but no answer came. Grace spoke instead. "A boy who lost his way." Minseo moved closer, curious. "He's so quiet." "He hasn't said a word," Grace replied. "Not even his name." Minseo knelt beside him. "It's okay," she said kindly. "You can stay here. We have warm blankets and hot soup." The boy looked at her, as if trying to remember something. His lips parted just slightly. "Haerang," he whispered. Minseo smiled. "That's your name?" He nodded. Mr. Yoon's eyes narrowed. Something about that name tugged at the edge of a memory, his late wife's handwriting on an old notebook, a list of names she'd once written for the children they never had. Grace caught the change in his face but said nothing. Instead, she whispered, "He's safe now, sir. Just let him rest." Mr. Yoon nodded slowly, his voice low. "Only for tonight." But deep down, even he knew that one night had already changed everything. The storm outside had faded, leaving only a soft drizzle and the smell of wet earth. Inside the mansion, the air was warm, filled with quiet tension. Haerang sat on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the flickering lantern as if trying to remember something long forgotten. Mr. Yoon paced slowly near the window, his thoughts heavy. The boy's name. Haerang tugged at memories he hadn't touched in years. His late wife's handwriting on old notebooks, lists of names she had kept, everything suddenly made sense. Grace approached, her calm presence a contrast to the storm of emotions in the room. "Sir, there's something you need to see," she said, holding a folder she had discovered hidden among your late wife's papers. Mr. Yoon opened it with shaking hands. Inside were records from the embryo program. 2 embryos had been created, one became Minseo, the other had gone missing. And now, years later, that missing child was sitting in his living room. He looked at Haerang, noticing the crescent-shaped mark on his hand, the same mark that appeared in old photos of his late wife's project. The realization hit him like lightning. Haerang was Minseo's twin brother. Minseo, sensing the change in her father's expression, knelt beside Haerang. "You're my brother," she said softly, holding his small hand. Haerang's lips curved into a shy smile, the first sign of recognition and belonging. The loneliness of years vanished in that instant. Mr. Yoon sank onto the sofa beside them, tears streaming down his face. I never thought I'd find you," he whispered. "You're both my children, my family." Grace smiled softly, her wisdom shining through. Sometimes, life brings people together in ways we can't imagine. Love, kindness, it finds its way. For the first time, the mansion felt whole again. Minseo and Haerang played quietly, their laughter filling the rooms. Mr. Yoon watched them, a mix of relief and joy in his eyes. Minseo lifted the paper lantern and placed it on the windowsill. "Mama always said, light always finds its way home," she whispered. The sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the house. In that moment, past sorrows, grief, and unanswered questions melted away, leaving only family, hope, and a new beginning. The rain had long stopped, leaving the streets glistening with puddles under the morning sun. Inside the mansion, laughter echoed for the first time in years. Haerang and Minseo were inseparable, sharing stories, jokes, and small secrets as they explored every corner of their home. Mr. Yoon watched from the doorway, a gentle smile on his face. He had spent so many years behind walls of money, pride, and grief, but now those walls were gone. Every smile from his children reminded him what truly mattered. Grace, ever patient and calm, helped Haerang adjust. "You're part of this family now," she said softly. "No matter what happened before, you belong here." Haerang's eyes glimmered with trust for the first time. He reached for Grace's hand. "Thank you," he whispered. Minseo and Haerang sat together near the window, watching the sunlight dance across the paper lantern Minseo had placed back on the sill. It swayed gently, a symbol of hope, of guidance, and of love that always finds its way home. Mr. Yoon stepped closer and knelt beside them. "I promise," he said, voice thick with emotion, "to protect you both, to guide you, and to love you, every single day." The siblings smiled at each other, a quiet understanding passing between them. Years of separation, secrets, and loss had ended, not with sadness, but with warmth and belonging. Outside, the city was waking, but inside the mansion, a new world had begun, a world built on kindness, compassion, and the unbreakable bond of family. And in that moment, for Mr. Yoon, Minseo, Haerang, and Grace, home was no longer just a place, it was love made real. The sun shone through the wide windows, casting a golden glow across the living room. Haerang and Minseo were at the table, drawing pictures side by side, their laughter soft but full of joy. The house, once quiet and heavy with sorrow, was alive with small, ordinary miracles. Mr. Yoon entered the room, carrying breakfast. He placed a plate in front of Haerang and another for Minseo. "Eat before it gets cold," he said, trying to sound casual, but his eyes betrayed the warmth he felt. Haerang looked up and smiled, a little shy but comfortable. "Thank you, Appa," he said softly. Grace, sitting in the corner with a cup of tea, watched the scene unfold. Her quiet presence had become the anchor of this household. "See," she said to Mr. Yoon. "This is what kindness builds, not wealth, not power, but little moments like this." Mr. Yoon nodded, his gaze lingering on the 2 children. He realized that the house was no longer just a building, it was a home full of laughter, trust, and love. Later, Minseo and Haerang went to the garden, their small hands brushing as they played with a paper lantern Minseo had decorated. "I'm glad you're my brother," Minseo said softly. Haerang looked at her, eyes shining. "I'm glad too. I finally have a family." Mr. Yoon watched them from the doorway, Grace beside him. The sight was simple, ordinary, but to them, it was everything. Life was no longer about what they had lost, it was about what they had found, each other. The day passed with small joys, shared meals, whispered stories, and laughter echoing through the halls. And in that home, a promise quietly grew, a promise of love, care, and kindness that would carry them forward. Together, weeks had passed since Haerang had arrived, and the mansion now hummed with life. Minseo and Haerang had settled into routines, homework together, shared meals, and whispered conversations in the evening. Every day brought small victories and tiny challenges that slowly shaped them into a family. One morning, Haerang struggled with a school assignment. Frustrated, he pushed his notebook away. Minseo leaned over, her eyes gentle. "It's okay," she said. "We'll figure it out together." Mr. Yoon, watching from the doorway, smiled quietly. For years he had measured life in profits and numbers, but now he measured it in patience, understanding, and love. Grace appeared with a tray of warm tea and biscuits. "Sometimes," she said softly, "help isn't just giving answers. It's giving someone the courage to try again." Haerang looked at her, then at Minseo, and nodded. Together, they returned to the notebook, their determination growing with every step. Later, in the garden, the siblings planted small flowers. Minseo laughed as Haerang accidentally spilled some soil on himself. "You're hopeless," she teased, and Haerang giggled in response, the sound bright and free. Mr. Yoon bent down to help them plant a young sapling. "We grow together," he said quietly, touching the soil with them. "Not just plants, us too." Grace watched silently, a knowing smile on her face. Every moment of care, every act of patience, every shared laugh had woven a bond stronger than any past loss. The family they had become wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was theirs. As the sun set, casting golden light across the garden, Haerang and Minseo ran to the house, calling for Mr. Yoon and Grace. The warmth of the home and the closeness of family filled every corner, leaving no room for emptiness. It was a bright morning, and the mansion's garden was alive with the hum of birds and the scent of blooming flowers. Minseo and Haerang were laughing as they raced down the stone path, their energy filling the air. Mr. Yoon watched them from the porch, a gentle smile tugging at his lips. "It's strange," he said to Grace, who was arranging flowers nearby, "how fast life can change. One moment, everything was empty, and now, it feels full." Grace smiled knowingly. "That's the magic of family, sir. And kindness. You've allowed love to grow here, and it spreads." The siblings had decided today would be their first adventure together. Armed with a small basket, they ran to the local market to pick fruits and vegetables for dinner. Along the way, they helped a neighbor carry groceries, shared jokes with the market vendor, and even rescued a small kitten stuck in a basket. Haerang's eyes sparkled with excitement. "I never knew life could be like this," he said, looking at Minseo. Minseo laughed. "It's because we're discovering it together." When they returned home, Mr. Yoon and Grace were waiting with warm smiles. The siblings proudly presented their basket, and together they prepared a simple meal. The house was filled with the aromas of cooking, chatter, and laughter. As the evening sun bathed the room in golden light, Mr. Yoon realized something profound. Life's greatest adventures were not about wealth or power, they were about shared moments, love, and kindness. Haerang leaned against Minseo, smiling softly. "I'm really glad I'm here," he said. "And we're glad you're here," Minseo replied. Grace placed her hand on Mr. Yoon's shoulder. "See, sir? Every day is a chance to grow, to give, to love. And you're all doing just that." That night, the family sat together near the fireplace, their laughter mingling with the crackling flames. The house was no longer just walls and rooms, it was a home full of life, warmth, and endless possibilities. The morning sun streamed into the living room as Minseo and Haerang sat at the table, working on a small project they had started the night before, a scrapbook of their family memories. Every page held a photo, a drawing, or a tiny note about a moment they had shared. Mr. Yoon watched quietly from the doorway, a soft smile on his face. He had come to cherish these ordinary moments far more than any deal, contract, or possession. Grace entered, holding a tray of snacks. "You two have been busy," she said, setting the tray down. "But remember, kindness isn't just about big gestures. It's in these small, daily acts." Haerang looked up at her. "Like helping the neighbor yesterday?" Grace nodded. "Exactly. Or even listening to each other, sharing your thoughts, or just making someone smile. Every act of love counts." Minseo placed a hand on Haerang's shoulder. I think we're learning fast, she said, her eyes shining. Being together, it's like we're teaching each other how to be better. Mr. Yoon joined them at the table, glancing at the scrapbook. Your mother would be proud, he said quietly. She always believed love and kindness were the strongest things we could pass on. And I see it in both of you. Haerang smiled softly, feeling a warmth he had never known before. I'm glad I found this family, he whispered. Minseo hugged him gently. And we're glad you're here. You make our family complete. Grace watched the siblings with a gentle smile. See? That's the magic of kindness. It grows when shared, shaping hearts and building bonds that last forever. As the sun rose higher, casting golden light through the windows, the house felt alive not just with laughter, but with the quiet understanding that every small act of love mattered. In that moment, each of them realized that family wasn't just who you were born to, it was who you chose to care for, protect, and grow with, day by day.